Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Sunrise Extra for a Wednesday. We are keeping the conversation going this morning. We chatted about this on our Sunrise News, but we are talking about kids going back to school in the fall or not. COVID has changed all the plans. Nina, your little one is too young for school. Mine are out of school. Drew,
yes.
I know that you've got two boys.
Yes.
And it's high anxiety for a lot of parents, don't you think?
Well, you know, we have Shelley Bailey-Shaw joining us. That's the fourth member of our conversation here today. And Shelley is the Beaverton School District Public Communication Officer. So Shelley, I was jealous of the Beaverton School District yesterday because we're in Westland, Wilsonville, and you guys came out very quickly, in my opinion, soon after the governor laid out some of the mandates and some of the new metrics that need to be followed to get kids back in the classroom. You guys came out with your plan, and it was pretty definitive. I especially like the fact that you told parents, hey, listen, it's not going to be probably till November till we get kids back into the classroom. So I'll let you talk more about this right now. But again, as a parent in another district, I was saying, you know what, I hope that our district steps up quickly because we all want to be able to plan. And that's the hardest part right now.
Yeah, I totally appreciate that. And to be honest, we made the decision to go fully online prior to the governor's announcement. But, you know, what she said just reinforces what we were already thinking, that the health metrics are just in a place where it's not safe or responsible for us to invite staff and students back into our buildings just yet. Believe me, no one wants to be in school more than our teachers, but it's just not a situation in which we can endorse right now. So in the Beaverton School District, we really have two paths. Parents and families can elect to have their kids do comprehensive distance learning, which is full-time online learning that's connected to their neighborhood school. And those classes would be taught by their neighborhood teachers. The other path in the Beaverton School District is something called Flex Online School. Now, this is a completely separate school in the Beaverton District, and it's taught by Beaverton teachers, not your neighborhood teachers, but by Beaverton teachers using a specific online curriculum. For elementary students, it's something called Florida Virtual, and for secondary students, it's called Apex Learning, but it's a separate school. It's really meant for families who are looking for a more permanent solution, and maybe for families who would have chosen an online school regardless of what our situation was. But for both schools, we will begin school on September 14th, and then we're guaranteeing parents that we will be in the comprehensive distance learning mode through November 13th. And we did that for exactly the reason you're referencing. Parents need to plan, and I realize that there's a high level of anxiety around not knowing. And so we wanted to give them some definitive dates so that especially our working parents could look at what that means for their childcare situation, what that means for their work schedule.
Now, I know a lot of people watching, you know, if you are a parent or you are a student or something and you are most likely not in the Beaverton School District. This is kind of a model. I know we're talking specifically about Beaverton, but think of this kind of in the big global sense of, you know, what we could all be dealing with here come the fall. So Shelley, I wanted to ask you more about that Flex program, because if you're a parent and maybe your district kind of opts for, you know, a choice like this, it sounds like maybe the Flex program is like kind of knows what they're doing a little better in the virtual world. I mean, why would you choose, other than you know your teacher, why would you choose one over the other?
Right. Well, we want to make it clear that both systems, whether you do comprehensive distance learning with your school or you do Flex Online, we're meeting the same learning targets set forth by our school board. We're just approaching it slightly differently. And, you know, there's pros and cons to each. As far as comprehensive distance learning with your school, there are families out there that really want to retain that relationship that they have with their school, their neighborhood school, and the teachers they know. And those families are eager to get back into a hybrid situation where they can send their kids back to school. So sticking with your school in a comprehensive distance learning mode makes that easier. Flex Online, on the other hand, the Beaverton District has actually had sort of a miniature version of the school in the past. We've used it in the past for mostly credit recovery for some older students, but we've now expanded it. So it's K through 12. And again, it's It's a different platform. The delivery is a little bit different, and it really requires students and parents to be a team. So when you do an online academy, you're, as a parent, really committing to be your child's coach. And so there is some difference. Of course, there's going to need to be parent support on the comprehensive distance learning side, but it's integrated into the Flex Online School. And our website, we've tried to do a really good job of differentiating these two. But the bottom line here is either way, you're going to be taught by a Beaverton School District teacher. And if you enroll in Flex Online and decide, hey, you know what, this doesn't work for me, then at the end of the semester, you can transfer back to comprehensive distance learning. The reason it has to be done at the end of a semester is that because these two systems work a little bit different, they're on different platforms, there's not a really great way to try transfer mid-semester. You can't just sort of pick up with your math class over on this side. So those families that do enroll in Flex Online, we are asking them to commit to at least a semester in that program.
Shelley, what else are you hearing from parents? We talked about working families and needing to plan, but what are you hearing from those folks, and how much did that impact what you guys decided to do?
Well, we hear a lot from our parents. They are very engaged, and I have to say it's been kind of a 50-50 split. I mean, we have parents who understandably were really concerned about the health and welfare of their students and our staff. On the other hand, we have parents, mostly working parents, who are like, how do I do this again? You know, spring didn't go well. How do I juggle, you know, not only my job, but my child's education? And we hear them. I mean, I get it. I'm a working parent. My child is older, but it wasn't that long ago that he was in elementary school, and I understand what those pressures are. So I know there's frustration. I think it's important to know that, you know, most of the staff who are working on this plan, they're parents too. And there is not a single question that hasn't been brought up from our community in the last couple of weeks that we haven't already discussed around a table, because we hear you, many of us are dealing with the same issues, and so we're trying to do the very best job that we can. But let's face it, we're in the middle of a pandemic, and things are not going to be business as usual, and so we're just doing the very best job we can. As far as childcare, that is a sore spot. I understand that. You know, there's just not enough of it right now. The childcare, you know, industry is under the same constraints as schools. In the Beaverton School District, you know, we can't be in the business of providing childcare, but we do want to provide our parents with support. So one of the things that we're doing is that we have a third-party vendor who provides, in a normal school year, childcare in our schools. And so we're working with that vendor to try to expand what they're doing so that they could accommodate more kids in their program.
I'm going to go out on the record right now and say that today's Sunrise Extra will not be long enough, because I have about 12 questions for you myself right now, Shelley, but I also feel we need to ask the question. Well, I have questions on our Facebook stream too, because the cool part about this program, Shelley, our viewers can chime in live, and they have some questions this morning. Linda Wilkinson among them. Good morning, Linda. Thanks for watching. I know you do it regularly. She says, what about students with special needs? She says she has a granddaughter who is entering her senior year of high school, and they're worried right now that she won't be able to learn as well if last spring, she says, is any indication. So the question more directly, what about students with special needs?
Well, and I want to back up one step and just sort of point out the differences between what we did in spring and what we're going to be doing in the fall. I think it's important for all parents to know that. Spring was a rush job. I mean, let's be honest. And no one was happy with how that rolled out. We're just in a bad position, right? And we initially thought that that was going to last 2 weeks. Well, that ended up lasting 3 months. So what's different this fall? First of all, we learned a lot of good lessons. We listened to our community, we listened to our staff, and we're incorporating those learnings in what we're rolling out for the fall. Also, the Oregon Department of Education has come out with a lot more requirements and parameters about just what should an online learning day look like. How much contact are you going to have with your teacher? And I think the really big thing is that you're requiring attendance, and grades are almost a definite. We're still waiting for guidance from ODE, but it looks like grades will happen. And at least for my high schooler, that makes a big difference.
Right.
I need him to know he needs to be in class, and he's going to be graded. As to the question about special education, this is one of those areas that we are working really hard to make sure that we're providing what our students need. Is an online situation ideal for a special education student or even an English learner student? No, it's not. But we're trying to set up a system in which they're going to have added support. Our special education students are on IEPs, and so we'll be connecting with each of those families to evaluate their IEP and see what additional things we need to do. Once we get into a hybrid method, fingers crossed that we have kids back in school, right now we have a system in which our special ed students and our English learner students will get actually more time at school. And so I believe it's an extra half day that they get on Wednesday. So our attendance cohorts work out that when we go to a hybrid method, we'd have students in school either Monday, Tuesday, and online the rest of the week, or Thursday, Friday, and online the rest of the week. And that Wednesday is when we're going to be reaching out and doing some added things with our special ed kids and our English learners.
Okay, that is good to know. We also have another question online from Anna Oliveris. How will this affect funding for our neighborhood school if the kids start the year enrolled in Flex, then switch back? Do you know the answer to that?
Yeah, so Flex Online School is a Beaverton school. So as far as money goes, money follows a student. So the money stays within the Beaverton School District. I think the other question has to do with what happens when people elect to maybe homeschool their child, or maybe they're going to opt for a private or an online academy of some sort. If they leave the Beaverton School District, the money does leave them or leaves with them. And so I'd be lying if I didn't say that there were some financial concerns here because, we assume that those folks will come back at some point. Their dollars will come back. But in the meantime, that does create some pressures as far as staffing goes and what we do when people come back into the system.
So I have a question about that, actually, because we've been hearing, I was reading an article the other day, one of our employees here at KGW has been doing it this summer, of these teaching pods where they're kind of like quarantining with a couple other families, maybe right in their neighborhood, or like their kids' best friends that they go to school with, at normal times. And they've been kind of, in their own little group quarantining, and they're hiring tutors for, however many dollars per hour to come to one of those families' houses, or maybe their backyard or their garage. And those, 4 or 5 kids now are doing school with that tutor. And maybe it rotates, whose house it is, maybe it rotates tutors. Have you heard of any kind of families saying, we're going to forego this year and we're going to do this pod situation?
Yeah, they're referred to as micropods.
Okay.
And yes, we are familiar with them, and there are people in the district that are talking about that.
Interesting.
Mostly what I hear people doing is that they're going to go ahead, stay with Beaverton School District and do the comprehensive distance learning, and then supplement with time with a tutor. And most of the time, when I hear this discussed, it has to do with working parents and wanting some extra adult supervision for their kids. So
because if one parent is home, the other 4 kids' parents can actually get some work done, and then you switch, like you take Monday, you guys take Tuesday or whatever, and you're home with the kids.
I have an issue with that.
I will tell you that the big not problem but concern here for the district is, what about our students with less means? Does this widen the
gap,
equity gap between the haves and the have-nots? And so
who can afford a tutor
I understand
to come?
I understand why parents are leaning that way, and those who have the means want to do that. But from more of a global perspective, we want to make sure that even our families without means have that kind of support. So we as a district had this conversation yesterday and are actually looking at, can we deploy staff into some of our larger apartment complexes where we have groups of disadvantaged students and provide something similar. So that's something that we're talking about right now.
There are families in our neighborhood and in our district who have talked about that very thing, Nina, sort of that small pod, what you call it, the mini pod, right?
Micropod.
Micropod, thank you. My thought is, backyard learning sounds great in September, and maybe garage learning sounds fine in October, but those two situations sound awful in November, December, January, and February, right? I mean, it's not going to be ideal. Eventually, those kids would have to go inside of a house.
Sure.
Right? And isn't that what we're trying to avoid to begin with? I have another question for you because we have Jamie chiming in. Jamie says, hey, this is Beaverton. You should speak to smaller districts, Scappoose, St. Helens, for example. Our population is very different. I'll only say this, Jamie. You're absolutely right. Every district will be handled differently. They're going to make these decisions on their own. I guess we could do a Zoom call.
We talked to Estacada School District,
yes, we did.
A very small school district, last week.
But the reason we brought Shelley on today is because Beaverton came out yesterday and became very definitive in the plan. Like you said, you've already decided to push the start of the school year back to later in September. You're telling parents up front, hey, we are going to do this comprehensive distance learning model through at least the beginning of November. So we appreciate the fact that you guys have come forward. Many school districts have not laid those plans out as concretely as you have. I do want to go back now, about 4 minutes ago. This alternative online learning system. I thought you had to commit to that for the entire year. But the way we just discussed it, parents do have the option to get into that and get out of that when they want to?
At a semester break, we're asking that parents and students, if you're going to make a change, that you do at the semester break, just because these two models work a little bit differently, and it would be very difficult to transition from one to the other. So again, Flex Online is really meant for families who are looking for a more permanent solution. That being said, I do want to clarify something that a lot of people have been asking on our Facebook page, is even if we go back to a hybrid model, say November, December, January, will the Beaverton School District still provide comprehensive distance learning through the whole year? And the answer is yes. So if you're one of those families like, hey, I really want to stay connected to my neighborhood school, I really want to be with my neighborhood teacher, but I am not going to be comfortable anytime soon sending my kid back to school, that's okay. You can stay with comprehensive distance learning. We're guaranteeing it through the end of the school year.
So, Shelley, I think this is a great question that we have on our Facebook stream. It's from Becky Battaglia Goodman. She says, I'm a child care provider and would like support in coaching the children through online learning. We will need to be included in the navigation of helping children while their parents work. We need the districts to include us in planning and training. What do you think about that?
That's pretty complicated, isn't it, Brenda? Because if you think about how many daycare providers there are, I mean, think of it from the district standpoint. You'd have to identify, what kids are going to be in daycare, what parents are choosing as far as their daycare provider, and then get a means to get them information. I think how we would tend to approach that is to work through the parent.
Right.
So we are committed to working with our parents and giving them the tools that they need to help their children. And then I think we're going to need to be asking the parent to communicate with their provider as to how they can support. Just from a practical standpoint, it's really hard to, we have 40,000 kids in our district, and we're trying to connect with 40,000 families. You add another 10 or 15,000 daycare centers onto that, it just gets to be difficult.
40,000 kids, how many students?
Well, that's what
excuse me, how many teachers?
Plus students. We have 5,000-ish staff members in the Beaverton district.
Yeah. Shelley, run me through, what would an average, so if you do, so for online learning, what time does it start? Are they going from the full, what would be a normal school day, that many hours online, or what is the time breakdown now?
So I'm going to be really honest with you. One of the things that we have not talked a lot about on our social media accounts or online are specifics about scheduling. And there's a reason for doing that. Our associations, our teachers unions have to be involved in discussing schedule changes and professional development. That's part of their contract.
Okay.
So right now we're at the table with them talking about exactly what will the schedules look like. And so it's not appropriate for me to talk time of day and get really down to the nitty gritty because that's part of negotiations.
Understandable,
But what I will say is that the online learning is a combination of both in-person learning with your teacher and offline learning. Again, recognizing that if you're a working parent, maybe you can't get on at 8 o'clock. And so we need to make sure that we have a mechanism that parents could get on at any time.
So maybe it's not a
anything.
live class
So it'll be a
happening, but like a
combination.
recorded something. God, man, that is so much stuff to think about.
It can't be live because, well, number one, 6, 7, 8 hours at school doesn't translate really well to 6, 7
sitting
hours
in a
in front
chair
of a
for that
screen. I
long,
think
yeah.
we all know that.
So they literally,
Yeah,
they cannot
and
be
so,
live class. There won't be live classes. Because I think a lot of people think that.
There'll be live segments, but there won't be a live day.
I think based
won't
on what
be
they saw
a
in the spring,
real-time
people
day.
realize that that's not probably going to happen. I mean, last spring, the problem was there was so little interaction, right? And things were so loosey-goosey. Kids could log on whenever they pleased and get their work done. I mean, kids were logging on 11 o'clock at night in some cases and starting their schoolwork for that day.
That's why I think it would be easier to do it. Okay, you got to be logged in. I mean, It's just like if you're not in the classroom door, you're late. I don't know. Like,
Well, explain that to a 10-year-old.
About a first grader who
Right.
needs their parent by their side to log in at 8, 9
Right.
o'clock, but that parent has a Zoom call for their job. Those are the kinds of things that we're trying to navigate. And as far as the spring being loosey-goosey, I couldn't agree with you more. Again, I'm the mother of a high schooler. When he found out that attendance wasn't required and grades weren't going to be given, I don't need to tell you what happened
Right.
from there.
You
The fact that those two things are changing, though, I think is really going to help the motivation factor for our students and our parents.
I am surprised at that. I just thought it would be live classes. Like
Nothing
that's how
should
you would have to
surprise you
do
at
it.
this point.
Because you raise your hand, and then answer a question.
Yeah.
Brendan and I are like looking at each other in the studio. But that's very interesting. I was just seeing Lisa saying they need something live. The kids need consistency.
I don't think we have time for
So
any
there
other
will
big
be
topics, do
live
we?
instruction.
No, I don't think we do, but Drew, we should.
I just want to be super
Okay,
clear.
okay.
Yeah, go
There
ahead.
will be live instruction.
Okay.
It just won't be synchronous the entire day.
Yeah,
Because
okay.
of all the reasons I mentioned.
Understandable. So we do want to say, if you're wondering what the heck is going on with your particular child's school district, because we are just talking about Beaverton this morning, we've got that information for you, all the nitty-gritty details, if you head to kgw.com. And you can also text 503-226-5088. We will send you a link to that information.
Text the word school.
School,
Yes.
thank you.
And we'll text
the
you
word
back that
school
link.
to 503-226-5088, and you'll get everything you need to know, because it's a lot to keep track of.
Yes.
Shelley
It
Bailey
really
Shaw, you could do that right now. You could text the word school to that number and you could find out everything you need to know about the other districts. But Shelley has us covered as far as the Beaverton School District is concerned. And you're getting a shout out here on our Facebook live stream. Anna Oliveros, who we heard from earlier, says, point blank, thank you, Beaverton School District. And not a member of your district, but I thought it was pretty cool that you guys came out as early as you did yesterday with a plan that is pretty firm and gives parents an idea of how things are going to look through at least the first few months of the school year. So we will let Shelley Bailey Shaw from the Beaverton School District go this morning. This is probably going to be a topic that we cover at least once or twice a week for the next several weeks, right, gang? That's it for Sunrise Extra, though, on a Wednesday, and we'll see you back here tomorrow.